Couple of caveats. I'm not an expert speaker. I'm a writer. Not even a very good writer, but I'm a fast one. And I'm not an expert on autism or Asperger's. I'm a parent, and a relatively new parent to this cause. Someone still of finding his way both as a father and as a father of an Aspie. And I've learned a lot here today, and I hope maybe some of what I have to say might ring a bell with you all and can spur some conversations. Let me start by telling you a story about the first time I brought my son Tyler to the White House. It was 2010 in the annual media holiday party. These parties, in case you don't know, are traditions in which the poor president and the first lady stands in line and shakes hands and poses for pictures with people who are going to spend the rest of the year beating them over the head. Anyhow, I remember this one in 2010 like it was yesterday. With a gold-fringed red carpet beneath our feet and a crystal chandelier above our heads, a tuxedo waiter walks up to Tyler and offers him a flute of cranberry juice. And Tyler says, "No." A few minutes later, a skinny waitress presents him a tray of bacon-wrapped shrimp. He says. Now he turns, right after that, and turns to a table of cheese and crackers and loudly proclaims in the middle of this beautiful executive branch White House building, "Are you kidding me?" Loud enough for everybody to hear. Each time I tell my 13-year-old son, "Please be polite," and inside I'm cringing. You see, Tyler doesn't know when he's too loud or when he's talking too much. He can't read facial expressions very well to tell when somebody's sad or happy or bored. He has a difficult time stepping outside of himself to see how he's viewed by others. Is he being rude to these waiters? Or is he just a little obtuse? Is he just a little too honest? Tyler doesn't know the difference between those. He's what polite company calls socially awkward or a bit off. Bullies called him odd. Even at the time, even I didn't know what to make of Tyler. Does any of that sound familiar? Yeah? Thank you. Because if you said no, I was going to leave. As we inching in through the green room, and we can see the president and the first lady ahead of us, and there's one more couple that's about to go up and be introduced themselves. I know we're next in line, and Tyler can tell that the pressure's on. And my little guy is sitting there practicing his handshakes and hello, Mr. President, hello, Mr. President, hello, Mr. President. And then he looks up at me just as we're about to go in, and we're being introduced by the Marine. It's a kind of formal ceremony. He can tell it's a big deal, and he looks up at me with these big blue eyes, and my guy with 130 IQ, and he says, "I hope I don't let you down, Dad." Yeah. It was about the lowest moment of my life. I mean, I realized then, what kind of father makes his son feel like he's going to let him down? What kind of father makes his son afraid that he's not good enough for his dad, that he's not living up to his dad's expectations? What kind of father is so pathetically unable to help his son, which I was at the time? Those were the questions that are churning through my head as I'm standing in line to meet the president with him. I wanted to tell Tyler not to worry, that he'd never let me down, that I'm going to love him no matter what he does. I'll love him unconditionally. But we're second in line to meet the president in a room full of fellow strivers. And all I can think about is a real possibility that Tyler's going to embarrass himself. And God forbid me. Looking back on this experience, I can tell you honestly that I wasn't just embarrassed about Tyler's manners. I was embarrassed about being embarrassed about Tyler's manners. This is a kid, after all, who would do anything to please me. I expect good grades, he gets them. I expect him to respect his mother and his sisters, he does. I love to play sports, he hates them, but he played with me. Guilt and helplessness are the nagging companions of any parent. A particular curse for a father like me whose expectations exceeded my common sense and who for years had missed and ignored signs that his child needed help. So 6 months prior to that party, Tyler was diagnosed relatively late in life with Asperger's syndrome. As you all know, Asperger's is a mild form of autism marked by a person's lack of social graces. What many of us do naturally to communicate and connect with one another, Aspies need to be taught. Tyler's on the mild side of Asperger's, which, as you know, is on the mild side of autism. He's got a far easier road than most autistic children. Therefore, my wife and I have a far easier road with him than most parents. But I think the mistakes that I made as a parent are instructive because they're universal. I let my outsized expectations get in the way of my parenting. Thanks to the Asperger's diagnosis and a plan hatched by my wife, Lori, later on, I stopped raising the child I wanted Tyler to be and embraced the one that I had. So let's go back a little bit and see how we got to that point. Part of the problem is that Lori and I, it took us 12 years to realize that Tyler was an atypical child. We ignored or dismissed the signs, enamored as we were by his precociousness and our expectations. As a Tyler, for example, wouldn't eat unless he was asleep in his high chair. And we would all tiptoe around his high chair while one of us shoveled food in his mouth, afraid that we'd wake him up and he'd stop eating. It was awfully cute. We didn't realize until later that an aversion to food is, in certain types of food, is one of the tells of Asperger's because of the sensitivity to taste and smell. Lori and I can now see that by age 5, Tyler exhibited signs of social incompatibility that we mislabeled as precociousness. He was our cute little professor. Everybody in the family had a favorite tigerism, we call him. That's his nickname, by the way, Tiger. I'll occasionally say Tiger. By the way, that's because I'm a Detroit Tigers fan, so sorry for the loss of it. Anyhow, Tylerism, and this was the immediate family in Arlington and our extended family up in Michigan, all had Tylerisms or Tigerisms, stories that illustrated his old soul intelligence and humor. For example, walking through the mall one day with his mom, he was about 4 years old, Tyler saw a crying baby. Rather than quietly asking his mom, why is that boy upset? He walks right into the strange woman's face, gets right up in her face and says, excuse me, man, what's wrong with your baby? The same month, Tyler was waiting for me to bring a toy upstairs from the basement when Lori tried to comfort him with a hug. And Tyler says, don't grab somebody while somebody's waiting for somebody's dad to come back. As you know, we didn't at the time. Many Aspies don't like to be touched, at least with some kind of warning or some kind of context. Lori just grabbed him. His oldest daughter, Holly, her favorite memory is listening to her 6-year-old brother try to negotiate his way out of a shower. Tyler said, when I get free will, I'm not going to shower every night anymore. I'll flip a coin, heads or tails. If it's heads, I'll shower. If it's tails, I won't. And we were impressed at the time that our 6-year-old had a concept of free will. But again, looking back on it, we didn't realize at the time that an aversion to showers, actually to any hygiene, is one of the tells of Asperger's. Tyler was 5 the first time I noticed a kid shunning him. We were down in Florida visiting my parents, and I took him to a playground, which we were constantly at playgrounds, and he starts playing with this kid on a pirate ship toy. And Tyler's chattering on about his fixation. I think at the time it was either Star Trek or animals in Star Trek. And the boy puts his hands over his ears and says, my ears hurt, and he runs away. Now, Tyler didn't really notice, but I did. Like his sister, Tyler learned to read while in the throes of the Harry Potter series. While most boys develop an affinity for Hogwarts houses associated with intellect, courage, or ruthless ambition, Tyler always considered himself a member of the Hufflepuff tribe. It's one of the most inclusive among the 4 houses, valued for hard work, patience, loyalty, and fair play. Hufflepuffs are the kind and lighthearted underdogs. In other words, they're kind of the nerds of the series. I asked Tyler once, we were at Disney World, and he just bought himself the Hufflepuffs jersey. Why do you associate with Hufflepuffs, buddy? And he says, they're the ones nobody cares about. He was 5 when I forced Tyler to apologize after he refused to share some toys with the neighborhood kids and to budge on their rules of the game. The game had to be played his way, and he was causing problems. So instead of apologizing, he ran up to the kids and says, can we start over? That night, I jotted the exchange in a small pocket calendar, a habit I started shortly after Tyler was born. And I wrote that the confrontation made Tyler, quote, so ashamed, yet so cute. And I noted that he tried to get back in my good graces, not by saying, I'm sorry, Dad, but saying, hey, do you want to play basketball? Now remember, Tyler didn't like sports, but he knew I did. He knew how hard I had pushed him to play sports as a young boy, a field of dreams fixation that I share with many fathers of my generation. Reading that note years later made me sad. Because of my ignorance, I treated Tyler like a boy who wouldn't play nice in the neighborhood rather than one who at the time couldn't play nice. So let's talk about sports just for a second, a little sidetrack. Before I had kids, everything I knew about fatherhood came from my dad, a big, strong Detroit cop, kind of the strong, silent type. Dad was a jock, and I was a jock. We had the perfect father-son relationship because it was easy. We had this bond of sports that transcended a lot of the problems a lot of fathers and sons did, a lot of problems that my dad had with my brothers, because we talked the language of sports, even if that's all we talked about. We had that bond. So when Lori and I had Tyler, I thought the only way I could connect with him, the only way that I could be a good dad, was through sports. That's all I knew. Once a week or so, until Tyler was 12, I'd drag him outside with a baseball, a football, a basketball, a volleyball, a hockey stick, a badminton mitt, a croquet mallet. I signed him up for Babe Ruth baseball, flag football, hockey lessons. I remember one basketball game, he was maybe 8 years old. He spent the whole game, it was an excruciating experience, running back and forth between the middle circle, while all the kids who were more feline compared to his stiff, awkward movements, they're running from end to end. He's just barely in the middle because they're so much faster than him. And finally, he turns around one time as these guys are blurring past him and looks up at me in the stands and kind of goes, this just ain't for me. Now, I really don't think I was one of those drill sergeant dads. Lori and I wanted him to play sports for two reasons. One, because of the exercise, and second, sports fosters teamwork and socialization, two things we really wanted. And you could tell early on he needed, but didn't know why. But still, I would come to learn that my expectations for him were out of whack. Things got worse for Tyler in middle school, both with the kids who bullied him and the teachers who either ignored him or didn't get him, or both. We were at wit's end until Lori stumbled upon an NBC drama called Parenthood. Have many of you seen that? Yeah. One of the show's characters is a boy named Max Braverman, a sweet, wiggly, smart Aspie. When Lori saw the episode, she recognized Tyler and Max and us and his parents. Tyler was about 12 then, and she said, you got to watch this show. So that night I was up until 3 o'clock in the morning downloading all the episodes. It was at the end of the first season. And I'm literally just weeping. I'm both out of fear because, my God, my kid might have autism. He's got autism. But also kind of relief. Hey, maybe at least we know what's going on with Tyler. Maybe we can help him. So Lori, who is the clear hero of the story, quickly got us in to see an education counselor named Dr. Mitty Quinn in McLean, Virginia. Dr. Quinn diagnosed Tyler with Asperger's and depression, which surprised us because from what we could tell, this was a happy, funny, perfect little boy. Dr. Quinn said, quote, life is getting worse and worse for him in a hurry. She said Tyler, like millions of Aspies, would eventually lead a good and a very happy life. But for now, quote, nobody understands him. Kids make fun of him. He's left out. Quinn told us that Tyler had one thing going for him in a big way, his sense of humor. She said it would always prop him up. And she chuckled when she recalled one incident that happened while she was evaluating him privately, when she told him, Tyler, you really need to work, you really have an issue with your empathy. And Tyler looked up to her and said, with a big confident smile apparently, I know, I'm working on that. So Lori got to work. First, she put together a team to support Tyler, therapists, psychologists, knowledgeable friends and neighbors, various social groups. She constantly tweaked this village to track Tyler's progress, or lack of it. Second, she worked with Quinn to put the special education system in our public schools in Arlington, Virginia, to our advantage. The biggest development was transferring Ty a few weeks after his diagnosis from a large cookie-cutter middle school that he was attending, the place where he was bullied by students and left adrift by the teachers, to a small middle school, public school, but a magical place called HB Woodlawn. I'm going to take a few minutes here to talk about HB, a little bit off the narrative, because I think it's a good lesson that schools really can make a difference. HB Woodlawn is a county-run magnet school with a waiting list so long that parents must win a lottery to enroll their kids in school. It's a mainstream school. Serving grades 6 to 12, the school has an enrollment of just 600, half the size of Williamsburg, where he was going to school. It's located just 2 miles west of our home. HB gives students more freedom and responsibility than the typical school, with an open campus, a liberal dress code, college-style classes, and a tradition of the students calling their parents by their first name. The kids there are encouraged in many ways to revel in their inner quirkiness. HB Woodlawn's a place where being different is cool. The school principal, Frank Hantenwanger, fosters a culture of tolerance in which kids like Tyler, all kids, but especially kids like Tyler, are not just accepted, they're celebrated. A few months after enrolling in HB for the 7th grade, Tyler entered a talent show, which just freaked me out. He told me he wanted to do a stand-up comedy act. And all I could think about was the kids aren't going to be laughing with him, they're going to be laughing at him. So the weekend before the show, Tyler and I got in front of the computer and we cribbed a bunch of jokes off of the internet. And we practiced his routine, which you can imagine was just a little bit rough. Tyler talked too fast and chose jokes that made him laugh. No surprise, he was more interested in what he thought was funny, wasn't thinking about his audience. He thought he was hilarious. So come showtime, his first two jokes, as you can imagine, bombed. He spoke way too quick and wasn't connecting to all of the audience. The jokes went under their heads or over their heads, and he was laughing, but they weren't laughing. What the kids did, though, was amazing. They applauded politely. That gave Tyler confidence. He slowed down his cadence. I swear to God, I saw him looking people in the eyes. And they start laughing, and then they start cheering his name. And when they did the awards at the end of it by applause, Tyler won second prize. So I'm in the back of this auditorium, again, kind of wiping away a tear, and I turned to a teacher, a public school teacher, and I said, you guys aren't just teaching these kids ABCs here, reading and writing, you're teaching them how to be good citizens, are you? I'll never get what he said, especially with all the distrust we have in politics and public service. And this guy says, yeah, that's what you pay me for. I could have hugged him. Another story about the school and the power of leadership in building a culture. At his 8th grade graduation ceremony, so this is his first full year, at Tyler's graduation ceremony, Frank, the principal, calls the names of 2 kids who are going to be leaving HB that summer. They won't be coming back because they're moving out of town. So a boy and a girl jump up. Let's call them Billy and Jenny. And Frank says, I know you all want Billy and Jenny to be welcome at their new schools. You want the kids at those new schools to embrace them and pull them into their cliques, right? And all the kids, yeah, we love Billy and Jenny. He says, okay, well, there's going to be 10 new kids coming to HB here in the fall. I want each of you to treat those 10 kids exactly how you want Billy and Jenny to be treated. So now my wife is sitting back with me and on the risers, and she's crying, choking up and saying, man, this is the perfect culture for him. You're right. The third big thing Lori did was send me on the road with Tyler. We needed to bond, she said, and Tyler needed real-world experience to socialize people, to use what he was now starting to learn in class, in social skills class, in the real world. So one of Tyler's obsessions has always been social studies and history. And my job covering the U.S. presidency for years competed with fatherhood. It kept me away from him, kept me away from his sisters. So Tyler settled on the project's themes. We would go to the homes and libraries of past presidents, Washington, Adams, Roosevelt, Kennedy, Ford for starters. Lori even urged me to arrange visits with President Bush and Clinton if I could. I said, yeah, right, but I'll try them. She said, you can use a job that took you away from Tyler to help him. So off we went. I called them guilt trips. If you happen to read the magazine story, you might remember a couple key lessons that I got from these trips with Tyler. First, I learned to see Tyler through the eyes of others, which ironically is a skill that he's trying to master. And I felt damn proud of what I saw. For example, right here, not far from here at Quincy, Massachusetts, Tyler dominated the guide's time during a tour of the Adams homestead. For every story the ranger told, Tyler had a question. Like, that's not an authentic fireplace, is it, sir? Or a historical anecdote. Did you know that Jefferson and Adams died on the 4th of July? And of course, I bet you guys have done this, I start shushing him. Tyler, give somebody else a chance to speak. Until this beautiful old lady, white hair and steely blue eyes, looked at me really dark, like, what are you doing? And she says, what happened to that nice young fellow who was asking all the smart questions? You didn't shush him, did you? So I realized there, that cringing, that ice, that knot in the stomach, I got to control it. Second, I learned to admire Tyler's quiet grit. A therapist early on had told us that Tyler was very courageous, and I just didn't get it. How could a boy who didn't play sports, who was afraid of bees, afraid of the dark and needles, possibly be brave? But the boy who faces up to his fears, to introduce himself to new people every day, for instance, is the bravest kid I know. This is the guy who was tugging at my elbow at the back of Bill Clinton's news conference in Little Rock one day. As we're waiting to go out to his penthouse for Tyler to have a conversation with him, Tyler says, no, Dad, I'm not doing this. You interview him. And I said, buddy, I've done that before. It's your turn. And he did it. In that meeting with President Clinton, Bill Clinton and my son bonded over their mutual affinity for Teddy Roosevelt. Tyler appreciates the fact that Teddy was weak and sick as a child, maybe even bullied a little bit. Clinton loves TR because Roosevelt led the nation through a period of immense transition, just as Clinton has done. Olivia can testify to this. Anybody who's covered Clinton, worked for Clinton, been around for Clinton has heard this riff. Roosevelt built the bridge to the 20th century. I built the bridge to the 21st century. Home income inequality, new technology, land conservation, peace, the parallels between the eras. He's going on and on and on, and I'm blown away. I'm very impressed. This is incredible. He's given me Doris Kearns' book, 2 years before she wrote it. What he doesn't realize is that Tyler, for as interested as he is in this topic, here's an Aspie with attention deficit disorder. He's getting bored, and his eyes are glazed over. Tyler didn't notice. So using abbreviations that I started 25 years ago when I was covering him in Little Rock, I write down in my notebook, I swear to God, I'll show you the notebook someday if you want, is BC and Aspie. Now, I know Bill Clinton ain't an Aspie, and I'm certainly not qualified to diagnose him. But suddenly I saw Tyler in another light. If even Bill Clinton, the most talented people person of his generation, maybe in the nation's history, can miss an obvious social cue or two, why am I so worried about Tyler? There was even a neat little kinship as we're walking out. Clinton, of course, insisted that this hour-long meeting wasn't enough. He was now going to take us on a tour of the library. On the way out, Clinton's kind of ahead of us, and the security falls in between us, and Tyler turns to me and says, or I said, "What'd you think, son?" And he said, "Well, he talked a lot about himself and his stuff." And I said, "Like you?" He said, "Yeah, like me." So this is off the record, right? I'm not saying Bill Clinton's an Aspie, but we all have. So 8 days later, we're in Dallas meeting with President Bush. Coincidentally, President Bush agreed to do it, and just 8 days later, we're traveling to Texas. While Clinton talked a lot and connected with Tyler and was really gracious, gave him a book of Teddy Roosevelt's letters to his children, signed it and gave it to Tyler. I mean, Clinton was great. But while Clinton talked a lot, Bush probed a lot. What's your favorite subject? What do you like to read? What are your hobbies? What's your favorite singer? Tell me about your school, your family, your hopes, your dreams. And again, I could feel it pit my stomach again. I feel that nagging worry. Is Bush going to consider Tyler rude and obtuse? I nervously changed the subject to sports. I know Bush likes sports. I like sports. So in the middle of their dialogue, I'm getting nervous. I'm feeling anxious, and I say something about the Detroit Red Wings. And Bush, who had just heard Tyler say he doesn't like sports, looked at me like, "What are you doing?" And I wrote in my notebook for the second time a note to myself saying, "Stop butting in." Bush turned back to Tyler, and he asked Tyler, the very next question was, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And Tyler said, "I want to be a comedian." Now, there's two interesting things about that. One, Bush said a kid had never told him he wanted to be a comedian. And two, I didn't know that Tyler wanted to be a comedian. That's the first time he ever talked about his future. And you know how hard it is to get these kids out of the present? He's telling Bush he wants to be a comedian. The exchange was an eye-opener for another reason. Tyler was terse, even rude. But Bush was solicitous. Rather than fight Tyler's idiosyncrasies, he rolled with them. Now, Bush is a man who famously doesn't suffer fools or breaches of propriety, but he gave my son the benefit of the doubt. I was beginning to think that people are more perceptive and less judgmental towards Tyler than his own father. Bush certainly was, and so was Clinton. So where are we now? Well, Tyler's thriving. He's slowly making progress. That progress started with his parents, but especially me. Take sports, for example. Not long after his diagnosis, actually just before we went to the White House, Lori and I decided to give Tyler a choice. We told him if he promised to join an extracurricular activity at school and exercise on his own, we wouldn't make him play sports. What do you think, buddy? And we're sitting on the futon in the living room. Tyler says, "Yeah, I'll take that deal." Shakes my hand. And then he's quiet. And like I always do, I said, "What are you thinking, buddy?" And usually he'll say nothing, right? This time he says, "I was really worried that if I didn't play sports, you wouldn't love me." Much of the progress with Tyler is come from himself, with help from, or within himself, with help from H.B. Woodlawn, his Asperger's therapist, his social groups, and surely a more attentive father. And all of this is a credit to Lori. Last year, in his freshman year at HB, he came home from school and told his mom that he had looked ahead, something Tyler normally can't do, and realized that he would be missing Latin class because of a speech lesson. So he took it upon himself to negotiate with the Latin teacher for a day's extension on his homework. He took something upon himself. He negotiated with a grown-up. It's a small thing, I know, but you all know how big small things can be. Here's some more. He's doing his own homework now, without Lori doing it for him. The other morning, he ran by us up the steps from the basement, blew past us yelling, "I'm going to take a shower." Lori and I gave each other a high five and the biggest hug we have since our anniversary. The other day he woke up, walked into the kitchen, walked past Lori, took his own medicine, something he's never done before. He's learned to modulate his voice. He even knows how to whisper now. He even knows when to whisper. When he comes home from school, he gets in his car and he tells his mom, "How was your day, Mom?" When I get home from work, he gives me this practice learned nod that I just love. Hey, hey, hey. He's learned that well. He watches now for his signs that his mom or his sisters are upset. He knows to pat him on the back. At his sister's wedding, my daughter was married, and she lives in Detroit now, last June. She got married. And he came out of his shell and surprised all of us with a real joy and talent for dancing. I can't dance a lick. Don't say it, but my wife can't either. But this kid can dance. It turns out that a lot of the times that he spends at the bus stop with his earphones hooked to his iPad, he's looking at videos, YouTube videos of musical acts, and he's, with his photographic memory, he's memorizing all the lyrics and the dance moves, and the kid's got moves like Jagger. He's also got a small circle of pals at school. He's got a future. The other day, for some reason, we're talking about what he's going to do after high school. We just walked out of his IEP meeting. And I'm learning, I don't want to put expectations too high, so I said, you might be going to community college, George Mason. He says, "Why do you say that, Dad? Is there any reason why I can't go to a university and live away from home?" "No, buddy. Let's talk about what you got to do." He has a weekly therapy group that he's had for the last few years with other boys with not special needs, but just different challenges of being a teenager. On his own initiative this winter, he left that all-boys group and switched into a group that he really likes. He really likes the kids in this group. He's becoming friends with this group. It might have the fact that a couple of them are girls. George Bush would appreciate this. Tyler's now pursuing his love of comedy. Every Saturday for 2 hours, he takes an improv class with adults. Can you think of a better way for an Aspie to have an activity other than an onstage comedy that requires instant reading of and reaction to your peers? Tyler's grandmother, my wife's mom, passed away in January. His grandfather, my dad, passed away just a couple weeks ago. And Tyler took, as you can imagine, those deaths pretty hard. But he talked about them a little bit with us, and a lot with his therapists, and some with his friends, which I think is a huge thing. At my dad's funeral lunch, the mass after the funeral, we were passing around the microphone to friends, my dad's old friends and family members, anybody who wanted to tell a story about my dad. And to our immense surprise, Tyler picked up the mic. And he confidently announces, "Hi, I'm Tyler. I'm Bampa's grandson." And for the first time in 3 days, I almost lost it. I can't tell you why, but just the fact that he stood up. But then he didn't just stand up. Then he goes on to tell a story about his grandparents' cottage in Canada, my dad and mom's cottage in Canada, and the tire swing that had hung from an oak tree by the lake. Chuckling, he told this group of mostly strangers, "The way my mind works, I always thought Bampa had hanged an entire truck from the rope, and after a big storm, one tire was left." Funny, right? But think about that sentence, "the way my mind works." The way my mind works. Tyler was proudly, unabashedly referencing his autism and his unique mental wiring. And the group roared with laughter when Tyler got to his punchline and when he said that he spent his childhood in the shallow waters of Lake Erie looking for the rest of the truck. So why does it make me emotional talking about Tyler and the funeral and running past us to take a shower? Because, well, you guys know, small things are a real big deal with these kids. And our children are worth all of the love that we've got, not in spite of their idiosyncrasies, but because of them. I want to thank you very much for listening to Tyler's story. I would love to hear yours.